Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Big Idea Podcast. My name is Eric Bramlett. I am joined by Brian Moll. Brian, it's good to see you.
So good to see you.
Oh, yeah. How are you doing today?
Never been better.
Never been better. All right, I like that. We have a series that's coming up in February that we are excited about. These are the times in church life when you get geared up to talk about a topic that maybe you might say people don't want to hear at church, don't want to hear anywhere.
Probably don't want to hear it anywhere.
Yeah, and so then when we talk
Especially
about it at church,
yeah,
it has a little bit of baggage. But that's why we work really, really hard to make sure that the content is solid and that it's honest and it's real, so that we can kind of pass through some of that defensiveness. Right?
Amen.
But the defensiveness is there because we're talking about finances. We're talking about money. Maybe this one is more about money than like overall finances. About what money is. Money. That's the whole thing.
It's the whole package.
The whole
I mean,
thing.
when
Right.
I think of finances, I think of money.
Well, I know,
think of
but
money, I think
it's
of
like some people
finances.
think about like financial investments and like the kind of the whole portfolio.
We're not talking about the whole portfolio.
Okay, all right. So
Just what they need to give to God so we can pay salaries around here.
preach.
That's it.
I'm so glad this podcast goes around the world. So this series is called Mine. It is a 3-week series, so it's quick and to the point, and we're not doing one of these 5 to 7 week series on finances. So it's 3 weeks. Talk to us a little bit, Brian, as the one who kind of helped lead the charge for where this content is headed. What are we talking about when we're talking about Mine?
Mine. Well, you're the one who suggested the title way back
Guilty.
in, I think, June or May or something like that.
Yeah. I liked these titles.
I think-
I was a fan of my idea.
Clearly, because it was mine, yours.
Yes.
Speaking in the third person, first person,
Always,
second.
yeah. When Eric Bramlett comes up with an idea.
It's the idea,
Yeah.
which comes from. Do you remember that song by Heavy D and the Boys?
Refresh my
Girls,
memory.
girls, they love me.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only way to love a Heavy D. Ah, you know that
Yeah,
song?
yeah.
And then the little refrain in there is this woman singing, "What's yours is mine. What's mine is mine. What's yours is mine."
Yes.
And that's where this comes from, because I think that's the thinking most of us have.
Yes.
Is I deserve what other people have, but I also
Deserve
what I have.
Yes.
But it's all mine.
all
And that's
mine.
the way we look at it in this world. So, although I didn't particularly like the title to begin with, now I love it. Now I'm like,
That's good.
I'm
Well,
all
once
for
you
it.
could link it to a Heavy D song.
Now I'm in.
Right.
now
yeah,
I'm in.
That's all it takes.
And once I knew it was your idea. I didn't know it was your idea, didn't like it. Now it's yours.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
But like, these 3 weeks, and you're right, if we went more than 3 weeks, you might be running the risk of people going, really, So as soon as we start it, we can say, don't worry. In a couple weeks, we're
Don't panic.
changing the subject.
Yeah, right.
But like, when you think about the way we look at it and the way it's written here, is we think about money as being all mine.
Mm-hmm.
When we do that, though, we run into all sorts of landmines.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's the second week.
Yeah.
But when we look at it from the perspective in which it was originally intended for us by God as a gift, it becomes a gold mine.
I love that.
That's sort of the 3 weeks. So I'm excited about it.
All right. Well, and we do. I mean, we do realize it's a defense thing that you do have to push through. But I also, before we get too far into it, want to just remind everyone that this is really good for all of our attenders to hear and to experience. And I think that sometimes we let that defensiveness turn into like statements from the stage that are like, "Hey, don't worry, it's going to be okay." In some ways, you kind of. I think a posture to consider is one of assuming that we're not going to have any defensiveness to it and pushing through with all the positives that each week has to offer. So that's just, because sometimes I think we can get a little bit too wrapped up in assuming a response, assuming a negative response. And the content here, as it's being prepared, I think has nothing but positives, both for us as we seek to brainstorm around it, and also for those attenders who are experiencing it. And maybe, for many of them, choosing to trust God with their money for the first time ever.
And I think what you just said is pretty good, actually.
Every now and then.
It's like, you've heard this a million times, but I think sometimes in the church we try to pretend as if we're not going to be teaching about Jesus or something, but the people who come here, that's what they expect. They expect a countercultural message. Otherwise they wouldn't come,
Yeah.
It's like this is the old thing. You don't go to a bar and not expect them to serve beer. You expect them to serve beer there because you're in a bar. You go to church, they're expecting to hear it. Let's not make any, sweeping generalizations that cause people to think like, wait, this isn't actually all that important. You're not going to hit me with the truth. Let's just go full blast.
Right. I love it. All right. Well, full blast. It is. So week 1, where are we headed when we're talking about all mine besides Heavy D?
Besides Heavy D, as good as that is. And
As
it
good
better
as it
make
is.
its way into all 13 locations opening song.
Or at least Tony Gurman needs to start charting right now.
Just maybe that could be the Barbershop Quartet.
Maybe it could be.
So just to give you a quick background, it was a year and a half ago, I think, I heard a message by Bill Hybels, Willow Creek. Incredible message that he talked. It was about Simplify. The series was called Simplify. And week 3, he talked about money. And he said that there's just like words he hears around Willow Creek a lot are like, I'm exhausted, I'm worn out, I'm overscheduled, over this, over that. When it comes to money, people are just sort of like they're mentally, physically, emotionally worn out because money is central to our framework for living each day. And so I love the way he put it in week 1 is like our message, big idea for week 1 is all I have has come my way by the loving hand of God. Contrary to the way some of us think, like all I have has come my way because I worked hard, I picked myself up by my bootstraps, nobody else helped me, so what I've earned is mine, right? That whole deal. And we forget about not only what we read in Scripture, like James 1:17, every good and perfect gift has come from above. That's where we want people to get to is like God is the source of all good things, right? And so even like you're an accomplished person and you've got drive, ambition, skill, etc., which a lot of that is owed to you and your hard work. But think about all the teachers, mentors who came, before you and taught you. Think of your parents who raised you, bathed you, fed you, clipped you, all those kind of things.
Especially the clipping.
They love to clip you. And maybe trim you a little bit.
Just a little bit.
But like we forget about all that stuff when we look at our world through tunnel vision and think we're the only one that matters. So the whole idea behind this is opening up people's minds to like, wait, there's been a million people that came before me that got me to where I am. Let me be thankful for that. So living out of a posture of gratitude.
Well, and I like what you said too about how some of this comes from the exhaustion that comes, and the weight of dealing with money being on our shoulders. Like a lot of times, we don't necessarily think about the selfishness that is. The self-centeredness that becomes, even in something that appears to be noble, which is worrying about college, or worrying about how we're going to get from this place to this place, or putting food on the table, the stress of loans, the stress of debt. I mean, all those things, they don't necessarily automatically come out of like a gimme kind of mentality. They can be very much kind of in this noble field of survival.
Right.
But it still has the same solution. The same solution is to point to God and to acknowledge that it all came from Him.
Yep.
Love it. All right. So if you don't get on board with that, it's going to be tough for you to get through the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. But don't worry, because then it's going to be over quickly. We'll move on to something more palatable.
Yes. Week 2, we're stepping into some landmines here.
This, I'm being serious, this might be my favorite week. Because, again, I'm going to reference the Hybels deal. It was an incredible message. Everyone should go listen to it. But he says, when talking about, like, these 5 ways we can live more simply. Number 1 was all I have is come my way by the loving hand of God. Number 2, I must learn to live joyfully within God's current provision for my life. And then he talks about how going into debt, now we can't say this of all debt for all time. I mean, and he distinguishes between those who might buy a house or something. But like when we go into debt, it is our way of saying, I am not happy with what God is providing for me, and I'm going to figure out other arrangements for getting what I want.
Oh, man.
I mean,
that is
brutal. I'm sitting there and I had to, pause it several times just going, how many times have I been unhappy with God's current provision for my life and tried to figure out, manipulate ways to get what I felt like I deserved. And that's what he talks about when he talks about debt, which of course falls perfectly in line with our theme of it being a landmine, right?
Yeah.
And so we're taking some of the life of Paul and bringing it to light during this week because it's that Philippians 4:13 passage, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, which is an incredible passage. And, we might say that right before we, try out for the basketball team or, attempt something that we've never attempted. And while...
Yeah, I believe Michael W. Smith said the race is on, as it relates to
the
that.
race is on.
Yeah, the race is on. Run the good race.
Oh, the race is on.
No?
I don't know. I've heard the heat is on. The heat is on.
I guess we grew up differently. That's okay.
Grew up differently.
Glenn Fry, though, I know that.
So you made me lose my train of thought there. Oh, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Yes.
We plastered on things as if God, with God, even though I'm 5'2" and have no coordination whatsoever, I could be an NBA basketball player.
Right, John Ferguson.
Only God, yes. But what Paul was actually talking about, the context is right before that, I've learned what it's like to be with a lot. I've learned how to live with nothing at all. I've learned what it's like to be content in any situation. I can do all those things, the living in plenty, the living in want, because of Jesus. And so this landmine deal is like we get ourselves into landmines and we spend money oftentimes because we feel like we deserve the freedom to do it. But then by doing that, we trap ourselves. And then we no longer have the freedom we were after because now we're $14,000, $15,000, $30,000 in debt.
Right. And I think, to go along with this week, making sure that your campus has a specific next step as it relates to debt management, if it's through a Financial Peace University run that's coming up or, something along those lines, just making sure that there's because you're not going to be able to solve that in 25 minutes of talking. And so, making sure that you've got a place for people to take a next step in that, I think is going to be really, really important.
Right. Yep, I agree.
I love this Chesterton quote on that. There are 2 ways to get enough. One is to continue to accumulate more and more. The other is to desire less. That's pretty smart.
That's pretty good.
Did Heibel say that, or is that you?
No, G.K. Chesterton actually
I know,
said
but
it.
did you put it in here, or did
He was actually talking about marriage, though.
Oh, that's
just
a bummer.
desire less out of your marriage, and you'll be content.
Well, in some ways, pick the noun, and it probably works.
Switch it out.
Yeah, all right. Week 2, we finished the landmines. Week 3, we look ahead to a gold mine.
Gold mine pot at the end of the rainbow, brother.
Absolutely. Save your lucky charms.
That's right.
I love it. So what are we going to do to think about money as a gold mine in the way we're talking about here?
Well, another passage. I love most passages in Scripture. Some I don't like. Most I love. This is one that's just right up there at the top.
It's not Habakkuk?
Habakkuk, Hezekiah, not a fan of.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
So Habakkuk's actually not a bad OT book. I was just digging through it last night.
I just like saying it.
You're saying it incorrectly, but it's fine to say it.
How do you say it correctly? Habakkuk?
Habakkuk.
You're making Michael cough.
Michael, stop. Stop being sick. No, it's this 1 Timothy 6 passage, which I just think is so awesome. It's this command to those who are rich in this present world. And I love what he says here. He says God gave you good things so you can enjoy them. Like we can sometimes, as a church or just as a people, we can make people feel guilty for having things. Like, oh, you drive a nice car, oh, and you're a Christian, or
nice,
whatever.
yeah,
What about the kid who has flies on his face in Africa? And
Right.
look at you.
What
do
car
you do?
is he getting into?
Exactly. As you sip on your triple skinny latte, chastising someone else for driving a nice car. Like that's our problem.
Yes.
But what Paul says to Timothy is, listen, if you've been given good things, enjoy them because God gave them to you to enjoy. But not just to enjoy on your own. You've also been given things so that you can bless others and be generous and willing to share. And so it's like this two-part thing. Like God has given us money as a gift to enjoy, but as a gift so that we can leverage that money for other people. And, story after story after story, right? I mean, that's where the old quip, it's better to give than to receive came, because we know our life is, at the end of the day, more enjoyable when we're giving it away than when we're just like absorbing everything.
And so we've got two challenges then in terms of what it looks like to step into that way of living,
Right.
right? Tithing.
And then,
what you've got written here, listen closely to the whisper of God, eager to respond generously to his Spirit's leading.
and isn't that, it seems to be the case for so many people where we say, oh, I'd love to give, but I'd love to, but I'm in debt, blah, 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 scarcity, hoarding, I've got all this stuff, I deserve more, all that stuff. But when you're freed from debt and you've established this rhythm in your life of giving, you've like cultivated a generous heart, then you're going to be more attuned to what God is wanting to do in this world, and you can give like gladly and generously.
Right.
That's what's cool,
And it seems like, this would also be kind of a great week to put a face to that, to be able to share a testimony at your location, things along those lines, where you're really trying to say, this is not just sort of a figurative concept of tithing, but like here's somebody for whom this has been true.
Right.
So I'd definitely be thinking in terms of how to kind of take this from the theoretical to the practical. No, it can be done. It was hard for us when we stepped into it. Here's what God has done.
Yeah, weeks 2 and 3 definitely call for personal stories.
Yeah.
And if there's stories from your own campus or from the church as a whole, I mean,
right.
10 times better, because
Yep.
people can feel like that's me too.
Absolutely. All right.
Along with Heavy D.
Along with Heavy D. Well,
We
that's
don't have
week
Heavy
1,
D.
really. I mean, week
one's
1 is Heavy D.
But it could you could find a reprise in that each week, as people are walking out.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's yours is mine.
What's mine is mine. Yeah, I like it. All right. Well, it's 3 weeks, so boom. I think we accomplished the goals.
We're done.
We're setting the table here for you to fill with lots of good stuff, lots of creative things. Hopefully these will inspire you. Don't be afraid of old ideas. We talk about this year after year after year because it's important, and sometimes we also kind of lock ourselves into thinking that, I have to unlock the never been heard before idea or way of communicating these truths. And I think, chances are pretty good that the makeup of your attender base is vastly different than even 2 years ago. And so, as we're brainstorming, as we're thinking about creative content, keep that in mind. And then, like we said, the stories, be thinking about, what it looks like to identify some stories that could, like you said, both help a particular campus, but then also one that maybe could rise to be considered as being available for all campuses. So definitely would love for you to think about it in that way. Anything else on this?
I was going to have a song suggestion, but I'll just tell
Bring
you.
it.
You sure?
Is the week 3 one?
This is all, I don't know.
Is this a surrender one or no? Something different?
Well, in there's 2 things. One, in Bill Hybels' message, he does this great thing where apparently they sang like all the Jesus, I surrender all or whatever. And then it's like, I surrender everything, but you're not getting my tithe. You're not touching my money. I mean, it's just the way he said it's perfect, we can say it in another way that'll be
Sure.
perfect as well.
But what was interesting about that was he kind of baited him a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because they had sung it already.
Yes.
So they had already participated in a worship song where they were singing "They Surrender," and he kind of gets them to the place where they say, "Well, yeah, you say you surrender, but
Yeah.
not in these."
That's the way
places."
the big idea ties itself together.
Absolutely.
And then
I love it.
there's a song by Sojourn. Do you know Sojourn?
It sounds hauntingly familiar.
Music out of Louisville,
That's in
Kentucky.
the South.
And they have a song called All I Have Is Yours that's one of the best songs about money of all time. So it's really good.
All right. Well, whichever arts director heard this first and put their name on that idea first
Yours.
in the Google Drive, it's a gift. It's a free gift for you to take credit for. So,
Amen.
Good luck to you. It's not mine. It's yours. So that's all I got to say about that. Continue to brainstorm and come up with awesome things. And those things, when they all work together, are helping people find their way back to God and leading them through a life that will change them through generosity. So thank you for doing that as well. This has been Brian Moll. I have been Eric Bramlett. We will continue to be those people as we say, so long, everybody, from the Big Idea Podcast.